Windows 365 user group meetup for November. My name is Ola Ström. I'm a Windows 365 MEP based out of Sweden. That's why we kind of maybe had some mishappening with the timing, time zone difference and things like that today. We have a quite full agenda for today, talking about different things coming from almost all over the place. But before we get going, I just want to do a short introduction of what the Windows 365 community is. And we are basically a group of IT professionals who are really passionate about Windows 365 and the community around that. We have a newsletter, we have a blog for knowledge sharing, and we also have user groups like this. Today we're focusing on the US user group, but we also have user groups for Asia and EMEA. Yeah, like I said, bunch of IT professionals passionate about Windows 365 driving the community. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can follow us either on Twitter, our blog, or LinkedIn, or YouTube. And with that said, welcome Christiaan to the Windows 365 user group, and I will let you kick this off. You are the first speaker, so please welcome Christiaan.
Well, thanks, Ola. This is just great to see a second user group event as part of the US, and of course we have the other regions coming up as well and being led by other folks, amazing community leaders, MVPs as part of this team. And I really would like to, before I jump into kind of what's the latest news with Windows 365, want to really share that this is kind of a platform where you can gather with other IT pros, customers, share ideas or problems that you have. And while doing that, and I think Ola and some other folks like Morten and Thomas and other folks are a great example of doing that, like from the early days. And they got rewarded as an MVP because of those great contributions. And we have some other MVPs on the call here as well. So really want to share great work by the whole team, and it's just amazing to see the love and the passion around Windows 365. So I'm just here as part of Microsoft supporting you guys wherever I can in the company to give you the credit and as well the visibility and help you wherever you want to be as part of the community work that you're doing. So just a quick introduction on my side. I'm Christiaan Brinkhoff. I come from a community background as well. So I've been an MVP 6 years ago, myself as well, active in different communities around virtualization and such, and worked for a company called Logics that got acquired by Microsoft back in 2018. So that was my entry level into Microsoft. I've been working on bringing Azure Virtual Desktop to market, and now Windows 365. I've been part of Windows 365 from the beginning. So from like when it was still like a Visio architecture slide, like blueprint, up to the white paper, that up to the product today is being used by thousands of customers every day as their production workload. So I'm very excited to bring my expertise and my product experiences coming from virtualization into a product that really makes it simple and solves those challenges customers are facing to just make virtualization available for everybody with just a flip of a switch. Just like Office 365 moved to, or Office moved to Office 365 and Exchange to Exchange Online, we are now moving Windows to the cloud. And we are constantly, because it's a software as a service solution, releasing and shipping new features because customers, of course, ask for them, but we are a SaaS service, so we need to release every month new features to stay ahead of new capabilities in market. So what you see here on the screen is the list of features that we have been announcing during Microsoft Ignite. So some of you have been like at Ignite, so it was great to meet some of the people of this team and have some fun and drink some beers as well in the evening. So those folks probably have seen this news. For the folks that don't have seen the news during Ignite, a couple of layers of buckets of expertise as part of the product. The first bucket really focuses us on client and profiles, or client experiences and profiles. So you will see the Windows 365 app release, for example, which went public preview during Ignite, so it's now available for Windows 11 in the store. Something that's coming in a private preview first and then public preview is Windows 10 support. So I'm the PM lead on this feature, and we are about to open a private preview for this. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. You can email me as well. So I'm just in the Teams chat, so just find my email address there and hit me up, and I can provide you access once we open that up. It looks like that will happen in the next week or two, so after Thanksgiving here in the US. MSA support is coming. So MSA is your Microsoft account, your Outlook.com or Hotmail account, so you can use that to log on to the service. So that's something that we are working on hard in the team. We haven't like release a preview for that yet, but we are internally testing it out, so it's close to revealment. Let's say it like that. Then we have a couple of more buckets here. So Cloud Optimized PC Management really sits in, hey, what are we doing in Intune and new features in Intune as part of the enterprise and as well the business product that we have. So think about new dashboards in endpoint analytics that makes it possible to really do hand-holding, monitoring, analytics, as well as proactive monitoring inside the Intune portal that sits in the persona of a cloud PC. So of course, you're familiar most likely with endpoint analytics for physical PC, but there are still some gaps in the portal that for cloud PCs, like latency scenarios or different scenarios that only apply to a cloud PC, weren't visible. And we did great work with the team to fill in those gaps and make utilization reports, connection quality, availability, like the duration of how much time you use and consume the cloud PC, all available in dashboards. And the other great thing that we did is making alertings possible. So, for example, if you hit a error in your provisioning policy, and the provisioning policy takes or crashes or fails for a reason that it cannot connect to your Azure AD environment or AD hybrid Azure AD environment with AD Kerberos or something like that, that a message, an email is directly sent out to your IT admin, and that IT admin can immediately take action on that and solve it before the users are logging on. So that are just examples of things that we are baking into the service, and that's available right now. Resizing, of course, but we make downsizing possible as well, and group-based licensing and resizing too. And there are more things coming in terms of resizing. So resizing currently works that you just flip a switch and then your cloud PC reboots and you have the larger resource assigned to that cloud PC. However, we are working on new things and that make it possible to do, for example, maybe a resize without a reboot, right? Imagine that you can flip a switch from an IT admin and a user gets more resources and the user doesn't. He feels differences on, of course, the resources, like the performance, but not on the impact it has to do the resize. So things are pretty cool there on that side. So just a small teaser there. I'm not announcing things silently here, but just a small teaser that we are working on. Seamless integrations there as well coming up. And of course, MEM enrollment for business is possible now too. And so if you are using the Windows 365 business product as a small, medium business, and you think, well, I might need Intune as well because I miss application delivery for my business cloud PCs, you now can enroll that into your Intune environment with your like business premium license, or let's say SMB focused, but like licensing offering that is cheaper and focused for small, medium businesses as well. So great feature that really sits in the listen to customers aspect, because customers have been asking for this for the business product as well. Security and compliance, Windows Auto Patch is now supported with Windows 365, so you can, next to, of course, releasing yourself from the whole infrastructure and the cloud managed services that we offer as part of the both products, you can now as well do Windows updates as a service, meaning that we take care of the Windows updates. We send you reports when they apply, and you can select the ring that you want to apply it in as part of a service that is AutoPatch. And AutoPatch sits in the same team as we are working in the same building as well here at campus. And it really sits in that extra level of service that you can offer on a cloud PC. And there might be more of those offerings coming in the future as well. E-discovery is something we released, meaning that you can now put your cloud PC in a forensic analysis mode, which is called e-discovery, and then it puts the cloud PC on hold. You can download then the VHD, investigate it, and then turn it back on. So FSI customers and government customers are very interested in this feature, for example. And then government cloud support is now available too in the US. So if you are active in government spaces, you can now use cloud PCs in there as well. And we are expanding to other regions as well and other locations in the US very, very soon. So integrations and optimizations, things that we do in terms of integrating with other solutions like M365, Microsoft Teams, and partners like Citrix, we are working on narrowing the gap even more with Microsoft Teams. So as you know, Teams on AVD or Windows 365 or Citrix or VMware, just like virtualization, has some gaps with physical Teams. And our goal is to narrow that gap to 0 in the next year or so. So we are working on different things that narrow that gap to almost 0 in the next upcoming months with a new version of Teams in terms of the plugin, the configuration that we use, the mechanics that we use for those plugin redirections that makes this possible. So more news will be shared in probably Q1 next calendar year. But just to give you a teaser that we are actively working with the Teams organization to narrow that gap even more, even though the gap is already very narrow in the last 6 months or so. Citrix HDX Plus is something we released in public preview. And this feature is really amazing from the fact of, hey, customers can remain using Citrix while leveraging the power of Windows 365 as a SaaS service. So think about the whole Windows 365 simple experience, Intune as a leading console to configure and maintain everything. But then with the Citrix protocol on top for Citrix protocol enhancements that you used to have, like redirection rendering, policies, redirection of files or clipboard, only one direction, all those capabilities some enterprises really like above RDP. They can continue using that with Windows 365. And the other great thing is that there's a flip of a switch on Intune Active that enables this, but you can turn off that as well, meaning that if you want to move to RDP as a customer in the future, you can just flip that switch back, and then it means that you are just using RDP. So we made it very flexible to choose only for the RDP or only for the Citrix HDX for the protocol side, but the whole infrastructure layer remains the same. If you look at AVD and Citrix Cloud and VMware and shifting to AVD native, that's almost a complete lift and shift and a migration you have to do. So we just announced as well the same thing with VMware. So VMware Horizon Cloud will be following the same solution that they have, but then with the protocol on top. So same benefits, but then with the VMware protocol and the benefits that the protocol gives today in the market as well. RMM tool integrations, we are working with partners like ConnectWise to work on a partnership potentially to set up RMM solutions in conjunction with Windows 365. So if you're an MSP, you can then manage that environment on behalf of via an RMM solution that provides very good, nice, important and comprehensive tools to do management and monitoring on behalf of. That's things that we're working on. Very important to make our service better for partners as well in the future. And we are, of course, adding more regions every time we hear from customers, hey, we need this region. So we just added United Emirates, so the Middle East region, and we added as well some other regions in that area. But we are already almost available in every Azure region. So if you have any regions that you would like to see because you have a customer that is blocked by that, please let me know and I can bring it back to the product team. You can also do that via the link below here, so ak.ms/Windows or W365 feedback. So that's the public-facing feedback portal. So if you have feedback, you can report it up to there as well. So before I hand it back over and give the great community speakers, the floor, because that are really amazing rock stars here that present cool content that is really deep dive content and the technical depth that you're probably are looking for. But upcoming features, I already shared a couple of these, but one thing I would like to really emphasize are the features in the second bucket, the experience and integrations, and then specifically the Windows 365 switch, boot, and offline feature. So app is something we released during Ignite for Windows 11. 10 is coming soon. Switch, however, is a shell integration in task view that we're working on together with Windows, and I'm the PM lead on that, driving those relationships and the work that is being executed by our developers. And that feature, I cannot share timelines because we haven't revealed that yet. It's coming soon as well. And boot is the same. Boot is a feature that you can boot straight from your logon screen into a cloud PC. So think about you log on to Windows with a local, or let's say an Azure AD account to your local PC with your username and password and MFA. And normally you log on to your local PC, but imagine that logon experience now cloudifies and you log on to your cloud PC and the user doesn't see any difference between your local PC and your cloud PC. And that's exactly what Windows 365 boot is. So we are building with the Windows Shell team to build new experiences as part of Windows logon screen, and our client team to build a seamless logon experience on the back that the client is being started up, but you don't see as a user anything of that. And that's an amazing experience. And we believe that that would change the market as well, changing more physical PCs to cloud PCs and providing that SaaS-grade service offering as well for end users as well as for IT admins as part of the service. And then we have offline mode coming up as well. And that might come later than switch and boot. And that provides a complete offline experience if you are boarding a plane or working from like a cruise ship or anywhere on the planet that you don't have good internet connection, that there's a local replica of your cloud PC happening incrementally in a secure manner, completely encrypted, that you can use when you don't have internet. And you can also flip to offline mode if you think that your internet is not secure enough that you can just intentionally can flip the switch and work on your offline copy of your cloud PC. So really amazing features and really build the foundation of what the vision of Windows 365 is and what the features are gonna be in terms of on top of that. And you can expect more of those features coming soon from us. We first want to ship these features in public, first private and then in public preview. But soon after that, you will hear more of those features that are coming up after that. So with that, that was my last slide. I would like to open up for some questions here. So is there any question for me from the audience?
We have one question from Carlos in the chat. I don't know if you want to speak up, Carlos, or just read out your question.
Sure. Hi, Christian. Appreciate you hopping on this meeting here. Great to discuss. So yeah, we've gone all in on 365, getting our entire company on it, moving away from a Citrix VDI infrastructure. Really happy so far with it, but really also excited about this stuff it's coming out soon. So interested to hear about how you're thinking about how 365 boot might work with Windows Hello for Business.
That's a good question. So I cannot really reveal that much because I don't know where this recording ends up being. However, Hello will be part of the solution, but it might not be the first iteration, but maybe the second iteration. MFA and passwordless authentication most likely becomes part of the default. That's just part of the core that we want to deliver. So more information will be shared there soon, but Windows 11 will definitely be part of it. The question is, does it ship as the first iteration in the private preview or public preview? And that's something that's TBD. But think about the experience that is just equal as your physical PC. So the same features, Windows Hello, the YubiKey, passwordless authentication, everything there will be supported at some point. So if you are interested in learning more about those details and that framing, I prefer to maybe you already are, to join the CCP program, the Customer Connection Program in Microsoft. You can just look that up, and then you join kind of an internal group of customers where we share like every 2-3 weeks more like NDA information with, and then I can perhaps share a little bit more there.
That sounds great. Yeah, we'll definitely look into that. Today we're using like a kiosk mode type setup for our users. We use, if you heard of the product Thin Kiosk. So we are hoping that 365 boot will be a full wholesale replacement for Thin Kiosk.
It will. So it just depends on kind of the use cases and the operating system you use underneath. So Windows 365, the boot feature will target Windows look and feel experiences. What the requirements as an OS are underneath that are something that we will reveal once we go public. So I cannot really disclose that right now.
No, we're already running
Windows.
We're already running Windows 11, and Thin Kiosk, if you haven't heard of it, it's just simply replaces the shell. So these are already fully regular Windows Azure AD joined into Intune devices. So hopefully we're all set for that.
Yeah, it will be a good replacement for that. That's for sure. And soon, let's say like after the holiday season, I hope to share more information with you all about that.
Can't wait. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. Any more questions? And I'm, by the way, at the Microsoft campus here. I just finished a EBC session. So if you ever want to see the Microsoft campus internally, this is your chance. Some folks travel pretty often to Redmond, but for the folks that didn't or don't do that every day, you had a sneak peek how buildings look from the inside.
I do have a few more questions in the chat. One in regards to native remote desktop client for Linux or Chrome OS since Windows 365 or for Windows 365. Are you able to comment anything on that, Christiaan?
Yes. We will have clients on every platform. As we have remote desktop today on any platform, we will have as well Windows 365 app for every platform. So Windows is the starting point because it does make sense to ship first for the product and this operating system you own as part of the company. But it doesn't mean we are not providing experiences for other platforms. So we are actively working on our Linux client, Android client, and Mac client as well. So when it will ship is something I cannot reveal, but we are working on that as well. So think about having a baseline set of features that represent the client on any platform, whether it's Windows or Android, just the same way. So the user actions like reboot, restore, rename, troubleshooting, all those features that are identical to the client experience of Windows 365 will land exactly the same on Android, on Mac, as well as Linux. And then on top of that, there are, as you might know, feature gaps with the RDP protocol or a remote desktop client per platform. So we are also trying to fill in those gaps to get an equal kind of redirection format available. That might take a little bit more time per platform. So we will continue updating the documentation on, hey, what are the differences per platform, and then narrowing that gap per platform as well. But just a baseline set of client experiences, that is something we actively work on right now. And we did already some prototypes for some of those platforms internally. So expect to hear some more news on those different clients per platform anytime soon.
Cool. We also have a question from John in regards to if there is any chance we will see non-profit SKU for Windows 365.
A non-profit means consumer edition, or is that just an education version of it? Education. Okay, that's a good question. I don't know of any plans of that right now, but it could be that there are plans. So I need to check that with the team. So I can see what I can do there in terms of information and send it across this group as an offline follow-up.
Cool. Also, another question from Mark in regards to hybrid benefit for Windows 365 Enterprise, which is a big request from many of his customers.
Yeah, I know we offer that for the business product today, and not for enterprise, because there is lots of overlap with licenses for M365 and such. So I can check that as well, whether that will update in the future and follow up on that.
Cool. Trying to follow the chat right now. Well, Josh is wondering if there's any timeline for being able to provision more than one provisioning policy per user to add to get more devices per user, basically, I assume.
Yeah, that's something we are working on as well. So we hear that more from customers and understand the complexity there. So we are working on a solution. So yeah, anytime soon you will hear us as well more about that. Yeah, this is great to see. Great, all those questions and interaction. I still remember the first version of the user group that we had like roughly half a year ago, which was quite busy as well. Lots of people, lots of interest, but seeing this community growing into a larger group of people really warms up my heart. So yeah, thanks for joining, and feel free to share the good news as well across colleagues and other friends, so we can all huddle and meet together next time. Is there any more questions for me? Go ahead, Ola.
Yeah, if I missed someone's question, can you please come off mute or just let me know in the chat and we'll raise that question as well?
I did. Hi, this is Tulio. What quarter would this be available?
What quarter? You mean all the features on this slide, or a specific feature I just called out?
I'd say maybe all.
Yeah, so it will not be a specific quarter for all those features. So they will ship in separate quarters over the whole year, and maybe some of them maybe slip over the year after next year as well. But most of them will probably ship in a time frame of a year. But I cannot say if that is Q1 or Q2 for those features, because you can imagine that actively teams are working on those features, and tomorrow somebody can find a bug, which also happens in just normal IT consultancy life, but then as part of a product development stage, and that could potentially slip a release. So if I say, for example, some feature ships like Q1 next calendar year, could mean that it moves to Q2. So once we feel very comfortable that it goes public preview, then we will reveal probably a month before that the release dates. Or we do it like this, share it just openly with a larger set of time around it, and then once we come more closer, we say, okay, now it's ready and you can use it, just like we did with Ignite, where Satya announced the public preview of the Windows 365 app, and it was available on the keynote itself. So
okay. I think one of my colleagues also it's on the chat asked the question, anything on the roadmap for troubleshooting live resources and monitoring for Windows 365 on their endpoint analytics?
Do you mean that you can fire off a troubleshooting action to the endpoint that sort of troubleshoots kind of what you do as a user in the client manually?
Yeah, but well, we do it from the portal, but the idea is it's not like real time. It's like 5 minutes behind real time.
Hi, I can jump in here real quick. So following up on that question, currently we leverage and we're trying to get off the Citrix infrastructure, right, as stated by Carlos earlier, and we leverage Citrix Director to monitor resources if users are having any troubles on the current VDI environment. So very similarly, trying to understand if there's anything on the roadmap in terms of monitoring resource allocations on Windows 365 machines, pretty much in a live scenario, so that support can get ahead of issues before being reported.
Yeah, I need to check that with the team. I'm the PM leading most of the Windows and client integrations and devices as well. This is a separate PM team, so I can check what we will do there. Would it be possible that you drop me an email? It's just my first last name at Microsoft.com, and send me that question, and I will follow up with you.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, we'll take the last question from Mark since he raised his hand, and then we'll move on with the session and hand it over to Don. Mark, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks for letting me ask a quick question. I just wanted to put some information around what I said in the chat around Windows 365 Enterprise for hybrid with a hybrid benefit. I work for TD SYNNEX, and I support the partner community, so I'm looking at this through the CSP lens. And we see Windows 365 Enterprise adopted at a 5-to-1 ratio in some cases, because we support managed service providers who provide Windows 365 Enterprise. They're the ones that are specifically saying, hey, can we get a little bit of a break on this, because you have to couple it with Business Premium or E3, and it gets a little bit expensive there, right? So just presenting that, because I've heard that as one of the biggest requests from the partner community. And I work with a lot of different partners, so thank you for your time today, and thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, it's like more on Ola and Morten and the rest of the folks here that are just doing an amazing job. He's even doing it from his evening in Sweden, so normally you should drink a beer or something. Anyway, now I really appreciate this feedback, and I will take that back to the group. And I also want to recommend you to take a look at the Flex, the shift worker offering, where you can share multiple users cloud PCs with like one license. We haven't disclosed the amount yet, so I cannot really share that, but it definitely helps you in building that business case. Whether we will change a hybrid benefit or the price of the service is something we don't have any plans for yet. But if you have feedback that things are just too expensive, just keep them going. And we'd like to hear the reasons why, because we just released an economic study from ESG. You can look that up. Maybe if somebody has it handy, can post it in the chat. Otherwise, I can do that as a follow-up, where you can really see, hey, why is Windows 365 cheaper than a physical PC or a virtualization technology? And that lists like the whole spectrum of the kind of services that you replace with it. But I can still imagine for some use cases, maybe it's not compelling for other things that you can use. So yeah, I will look that up and follow up on that.
Thank you so much, Christiaan, for taking time out of your day and joining us for the user group.
Yeah, you're welcome, and happy to join back in next time. And of course, stay connected on social media with all of you. And if there's anything you feel in terms of feedback or whatever you think you should share to us, to the product team, use me as a gateway. You can just poke me on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, even Facebook if you would like. If you still use that or want to use that as a format for this, but really like see me as your ambassador in the listening ear, where 90%, 95% of my day job is just product management, developing features, and working on the future of Windows 365. The other 5% is really helping you, the community, and show the appreciation to the community via platforms and meetups, drinking beer, MVP summits, and things like that. So really looking forward to seeing you more, and thank you for watching this first part. And now we can show the real good stuff with I think Paul and Neil showing you some great insights.
We actually have Don coming up next, talking a little bit about Graph, I assume. But thank you once again, Christiaan. If there's any more questions, just throw them in the chat. We'll see if we can get them answered. Otherwise, we'll get in touch. So please go ahead, Don.
Okay, hello, everybody. I'm going to be talking about the Graph API with Windows 365 today. Basically, I'm going to be going over what is Graph. I think we all kind of know, but just to level set, what permissions you need to access the Graph, basically the permissions, consent, and an access token. I'm going to go through creating a very fast enterprise application in Azure Active Directory to allow me to use my PowerShell scripts to connect to the Graph as opposed to doing an interactive session. And then I'm just going to be going through a lot of PowerShell examples and a lot of PowerShell code for different tasks in the Graph that you can do for the Cloud PC lifecycle, going through basically looking at what the MEM interface looks like and how I can do the same functionality in Graph. So I hope this is going to be interesting for you. So this I just copied and pasted from the Microsoft website because I don't know what graph is. Graph is graph. But technically it is a unified programmability model to access the cloud resources. And by being uniform, you can use the same graph functionality to access whether it's Windows 365 information, SharePoint information, MEM information, whatever you're looking for, you can have the same graph experience. And it's a RESTful web API. So while I'm using the PowerShell SDK commandlets in my examples here, you can also do everything as a RESTful web call. So in my environment, we use ServiceNow as our front end for the level 1 support and for the provisioning of computers. So instead of using the SDK with the PowerShell commandlets, we do everything through REST API calls and JavaScript. I believe they're using JavaScript on the back end of ServiceNow. I don't know, that's another team. I just gave them the calls. So you're not specific to having to use PowerShell and having to use specific versions of different graph APIs, because you can do everything through a REST call. So to connect to the graph, you need 3 things. First, you need permission.
Sorry to interrupt, but I don't think you're sharing your screen because we're not seeing anything if you're.
Oh, I thought I was sharing. I knew I would screw
no
up
worries.
something.
No
Okay, now
worries.
let's get the cat off the table. Let's see. I want to share, and I want to share my desktop. Okay, where's share desktop? Let's close that. Share. Screen 1. I knew I would screw something up. Okay, that's over with. Okay, can you see me now?
Nothing.
Nothing yet. Still the same.
It says presenting at the top.
Ah.
Maybe you're presenting it in another team or something.
I don't think so. I'll go back here. Here's you. And show stop sharing. Open share tray. Screen 1. No?
Nope.
Shit. Shoot.
Grace.
So I only have one team open.
Let's try making you attendee again and then just make you a presenter again and see if that helps.
You're a presenter. You can share your device.
Uh-huh.
Much better. That did a trick. Or at least something.
Can you see it now?
We see darkness.
Now.
There it is.
Perfect.
There it is.
Please continue. Now
Okay.
that we saw that.
Sorry about that. So what was I talking about? The 3 things you need to connect. You need to have permissions to the resource you want to connect to. You need to have consent to let the graph access the content on behalf of you. And you need a bearer token, which is your OAuth authentication to access it. Now I'm going to stop sharing this and try resharing my whole desktop so I can switch windows. Can you see now?
Yes, we see.
Okay. All right.
All good. All good.
All good? Okay. I hope the window is big enough. So basically, to find out what permissions you need to run a graph command, you want to look at the Microsoft documentation. So I'm going to go to this web page here. And this is the documentation. They did a really great job on what exactly the commands are and what permissions you need to run the commands. So here you have under the permissions section, what permission from least privilege to most that you need to be able to run a command in the Graph API. So if you're doing work on the cloud PC and you're going to be writing information, you need this cloud PC read write all in order to access the graph. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck. So the examples I'm going to be showing in my PowerShell, I'm going to be granting a license to a user account. I'm going to be creating an Azure Active Directory account to put on a provisioning profile and then adding the user as a member of it. And I'm going to be performing different cloud functions. So this slide shows once I went to the Microsoft documentation to see what permissions I would actually need in order to process these commands. Consent. Now I'm going to kind of stumble over this because it's kind of a gray area in my brain, but from my understanding, you need consent. You need to grant consent to the graph to be able to act on your behalf. Some of your lower privilege permissions like reading, you just need the user to consent to say that, yes, this application can access graph on your behalf. For higher functionality levels like writing information, creating or deleting, you need the administrator of the tenant to consent to allow your application to function on your behalf.
Sure.
So if anyone can correct me if I got that wrong, that's great. For permissions, you have two different types of permissions. You have the delegated permissions. This is where a user is signed on, and PowerShell, you do the connect to graph, and it will pop up with a screen that prompts you to log into your Microsoft account, your work account, and do MFA if it's appropriate. Or you can run as an application. And my examples are all going to be as an application. So with an application permission, no user sign-on is necessary, or the user is not actually there. And you're running on behalf of the enterprise app. So I'm going to do a demonstration. I'm going to create a new enterprise app. I know the first time I went to do this, I was researching the internet a lot. The more I did it, the more less complicated it appeared. The one thing in production, I'm using in my lab a secret key. I created a secret key, and I'm just putting the secret in my PowerShell scripts as clear text. Obviously, this is a lab environment. In production, you might want to use Azure Key Vault to hide the secret so it's not just out there. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at the creating the new app registration in Azure, assigning the permissions and granting the consent through the enterprise app. So with that, I'll go over to my Azure tenant. So the first thing I'm going to do in Azure Active Directory is I'm going to go down to app registration here. I'm going to create a new registration. So I'm going to call this demo 2 because I've created lots of demos. I'm in a single tenant. I'm going to give it a web URI. And since this is just internal and it's not going outside anywhere, I'm just going to give it a fake local host.
Could you please make it a bit bigger, please? Yes.
How's that?
So it's better. Thank you.
Okay. Local host 2. Then I'm going to register my app. So you'll see here the app is registered. The information you're going to want to take down and save is your application ID and your tenant ID. You're going to need these in PowerShell to actually connect to the application. Now that I have my application created, I'm going to go down to API permissions. And I'm going to add the permissions that I listed on the slide so that this application can access the graph. I'm going to select Microsoft Graph as my application. And I'm doing application permissions. I want user. Oop. And this is recorded, so you can go back and look at the slide deck to see what actuals, or you can look it up just doing a Google search. So now I've added the permissions, but the status is not consented yet. So I'm going to say grant admin consent for config girl. That's the name of my tenant. And it was granted. And I'm going to go up under secrets and keys. And I'm going to create a new secret. And since it's a lab, I'm picking 24 months. Now it's important that at this point you document and copy what the value is of your secret. This is the only time you'll be able to copy and have the secret. That I can't talk. It's the only time you'll have the secret available to you for being ability to copy and paste. So if you don't document it now, if you don't copy and paste it someplace and save it, you'll have to delete the secret and create a new secret in order to access it. So now my application is created. I just have one more step to do. I need to go down to enterprise applications. Find the enterprise application I just created. And under permissions, I need to grant admin consent. And here it's going to prompt me to log in. And this is the consent screen. You'll see where it's saying, do I want to grant the permissions, consent to the permission to act on my behalf for these different permissions. I said permissions too many times. So I'm going to accept. So that's how you create an enterprise application. Any questions on that? I kind of did it fast. Okay. Now, how do you actually access the graph? There are different ways to access it. When I first started, I used the Graph Explorer. This is a nice visual way to kind of see what is out there and to see what the name of the fields are to get a look and feel. There's a cool add-on to Microsoft Edge called Graph X-Ray that will show you for any Azure portal what the commands are that are running in the background in Graph. And then as my examples are all going to be, you have PowerShell. So I'm going to be using the Windows 365 SDK PowerShell commandlets, but you can also use the REST calls. So let's go to developer.graph.com. Okay, larger screen. This is. Oh, but that's large enough. So this is the Graph Explorer. Now, as the one screen had mentioned, everything for Graph for Cloud PC is in the beta view. So here I can go to beta, do the type ahead to virtual PC. Device management, sorry. Device management, virtual PCs, virtual endpoints, PCs, and I can say run query. And it's going to list all the Graph PCs that I have in my environment, my 2 Graph PCs, my 2 cloud PCs. The nice thing about using the Graph Explorer is I can go over to code snippets and click on PowerShell, and it'll give me the PowerShell commandlets that I need in order to run the same command using the PowerShell SDK. So that's handy. So next I'm going to show the graph X-ray. So if you bring up your developer panel, and I installed the graph X-ray from the Edge extensions, and I want PowerShell. So any command that I do in Windows 365, if I click on refresh here to show my machines, version F12, graph X-ray, let's do this again. It just showed me the same thing. It's kind of small. Over here, where it's showing the get command that it ran, the import of the module, only it added the filter where it was looking for the service plan type of enterprise. I click on a PC's name. It extended, and it showed me all of the graph commands that it used to bring up the information on the computer. Then if I wanted to reference this later, I can say save script. And here are the commands in Notepad. So I can reference them later and see that I need to do the import. I can do the get command of my role-based access, the device management. Again, it's importing, I can't draw a line. It's importing the administration. So those are the different ways to access graph. So what I'm going to be demonstrating here is just kind of going over the PC cloud lifecycle. So you have your provisioning, your configuration, your protect, your monitor, and your deprovisioning. So I'm going to go over how to provision a cloud PC. Under the monitoring, I'm going to do a resize and a restart. And then I'm going to deprovision a cloud PC as part of the examples. So as I know, we're all aware, when we go to provision a computer, you need to create the provisioning policy. In my examples, I'm assigning the license to the user, and then I'm adding the user to the group. I'm not doing a group-based licensing. I'm going to monitor the status to see when the provisioning is done, although I won't do that real time because it takes too long. And basically, my script looks at creating the PC, it's provisioning it, and then it monitors the status to see when it goes into a provisioned mode, and then it sends an email to the user. I'm going to be restarting, reprovisioning, deprovisioning, and sending examples of sending some emails out, looking at the audit log to see when a machine's been deleted, to send the user an email saying your machine's been deleted. And this was just notes to myself on what the examples are. So now let's go to VS Code and do our examples.
Question for you, Dawn. Will you be sharing these PowerShell samples?
I'd be happy to. Where can I share them? Is there someplace I can attach them to share them up out, or?
Maybe in this Teams chat.
Okay.
Perhaps.
I can.
You can put them here on Teams, and we can look into if we can help you publish these somewhere as well for the community.
Yes, I don't have a GitHub. I am not that sophisticated yet in my programming, and my examples are as is. So I was more organized before the meeting started, and I got nervous. So I want to connect Cloud PC misconnect. So we're going to start with, I'm not using the enterprise application I just created. Is this large enough for people to see? Large there.
Yep.
So here is for the, I think I called it demo 2 register, my demo 1 app registration. I've done so many over the last week. Here, as I said, is the app ID, my secret, and my tenant ID. So I'm going to run those to set the variables. The first thing that's going to happen is you need to go out to the Microsoft authentication module, the MSAIL module and install that and then import it. I'm not going to import all of the graph modules. I only need to have these 4 graph submodules. So instead of installing the whole graph, which takes several minutes, it's much faster just to install the modules that I need. So basically, I'm checking to see what modules are installed, installing the ones that aren't there. Then I'm importing all the modules. And here I'm doing my call to the Microsoft authentication with my tenant and the enterprise application information. I'm connecting to Graph and I'm setting my profile to the beta profile. My understanding is once you authenticate to the Graph, your OAuth token lasts for an hour. So if you're going to be doing things that last more than an hour, you're going to need to re-authenticate or resubmit the authentication token. So here we are out on the Graph. So now I'm going to create my provisioning policy. Just want to kind of do a level set. So when we are in Windows 365, if I were to create a provisioning policy from scratch, I would need to provide it a name, what type of domain join I'm going to do. For here, I'm doing in Azure. What the network is, I'm doing my VNet I created for my cloud PC. What type of image, whether it's gallery or custom. My example is for a custom gallery image. And then selecting which gallery image I want. I'm just kind of go through this to show you these same pick items I'm doing here are going to be picked in the script. And then for region, I'm doing English United States, and I'm not selecting any other. I'm not selecting AutoPatch. And then I would add a group assignment. And following those steps would create my provisioning policy. So if I go back to my example here, if I wanted to see what the different images are in the gallery, this PowerShell commandlet for gallery image is going to show me the different images that are out there. And what I need for the provisioning package is the ID of the different image I want. This ID for the image that I need. So I originally did this command so I could find how to filter to get the ID I wanted. And I saw the recommended SKU and my SKU display name. And once I have this information, I was able to build the query, the where statement, to say which image I'm going to pick for my provisioning policy. So I went with where the SKU is 22H2. Heavy is the image with the Microsoft 365, and I'm going to do Windows 11 Enterprise. I only have one connection, so I can just do connection ID, getting the on-premise connection and getting the ID file for that. And then I am using the parameter section. Instead of having to pass each parameter separately on the command line, I just did a hash table. I'm telling it that I'm using a cloud provisioning policy. I gave it my description. I told it that I'm doing an Azure AD join and I'm passing it my network, my image name and display name, that it's gallery, and that it's for the language of English. So if I run this, it ran. You'll see I now have a new provisioning policy called Demo 4 with no assignment to it. So I did the assignment as a separate step. So I'm going to create an Azure Active Directory group that I'm going to use for my provisioning package. You could use an existing one just to make the script run faster. I've decided to create a new one for the demonstration. You need an assignment ID. So this just needs to be any unique identifier. So I just said new GUID so that it was always a unique GUID that was coming up. So I'm going to create the group, then I'm going to assign the group to the provisioning policy that I created above, passing in the ID from the provisioning policy. So you see demo 4, it now has an assignment, and the assignment is to this group Cloud PC demo 4. Now for one-offs, the script might have been overkill, although it is nicer to type it in a script screen than it is to type it through the demo window. But what I also have here and to share with you is a function called create provisioning policy. And basically what this does is it allows me to pass in the different languages that I want the provision policy to be in. Again, this provisioning policy isn't going to do the assignment. This function isn't going to do the assignment of the group, but it will sit there and create all the provisioning packages for the different languages. Where I work, we're supporting 20 different languages now, I think 20 or 21. So when I was setting up our cloud environment, I used this function to create one for each of the different languages that people would need to build their cloud PCs in. The one thing I can tell you is it's very important that the second half of this, the MX, the CN, and the TW, are in capital letters. If they're not exactly in capital letters like this, how they are officially on Microsoft's website, the function will not work, and it will give you an error message saying it can't find the language. It was a very obscure error message too. But that's how you would create multiples. All right. So now that we have our provisioning policy, I'm going to actually assign a user to a cloud PC, make a user a cloud PC. So my username is Alex W. You might notice that I am using one of the DevOps tenants here. So all my users were already created for me. So good old Alex W is going to be getting a new cloud PC. And I'm making the assumption that the user's UPN is the same as their email account. So I'm going to get the user ID. I need their actual ID parameter to pass. And then you need the license SKU that I want to assign to the user. Now there's different ways to find the SKU. There is a website that has all of the product names, the service names, and the SKUs on them. And I believe I have this referenced in the slide so you can get the website and out of the script. I have it commented. And then you can download this as a CSV file. I didn't do that. I do a shortcut. So I go to Azure Active Directory. Then I go down to licenses, all products, and I pick the license I want to find out. And then if you look at the end of the URL, it gives you the SKU number. So whatever Microsoft license you want to look up and you're going to reference through the graph and you need the SKU, you can just bring up the page in Azure and look at the end, and then that's the valid SKU number for the license. So Alex here is going to get a 2 CPU, 4 GB, 128 gig RAM. And then for the email, which I'm not really going to be showing here, but my demonstration had the email server, and then just my fake body saying, you now have a cloud PC. So to add the license, again, I used a parameter, but I could just as easily have put these down on the command line as switches. I'm adding in a license with the SKU number. And then since I'm not removing a license or disabling a plan, those are just empty arrays that are passed. And then I'm going to add the user to the group. And by doing this, as you know, once he has a license and is in the provisioning group, he'll be able to, the cloud PC will start provisioning. So now it takes a second. Ah. In a minute here, I'll come back in a second. We should see that Alex's computer starts provisioning. Meanwhile, while we're waiting for that to come in, the demo gods don't like me today. I'm trying to find Alex's email. So he has his license. And you'll see Alex is now being provisioned a new computer. Now we can check the provisioning status. If I do a status of just get the cloud PC and the user PN status, if I run this, it'll show me that his status, I don't know if you can see this. His status is provisioning. So basically I just had a loop that looked every minute to see what the status was. And once the status went from provisioning to provisioned, it sent out an email to the user letting them know that they have a new cloud PC. So now we're going to go over and run some commands on the existing cloud PCs that I have out there. So I'm going to play with Adele's computer now. And basically I am going to restart Adele's computer. So if you provide it the PC name, you can run a get the virtual cloud PC command, giving it the managed device name, and then send a restart out. So if I run this, and we go back out here, and we click on Adele. You'll see her computer is pending a restart. And then it takes a few minutes for the restart to actually occur. I've noticed sometimes syncing makes it go faster. So that's how you send out a restart, which is kind of nice because, as I said, you can go if ServiceNow is your help desk portal, or if you have some other interface that your level 1 support goes to and you need to restart the computer, you can just, from the console they're already in, give them a button that they can runs this command in the background and it restarts the computer. So they don't have to go to the web console if you don't want them going to the web console. Now you can also resize the computer. You can resize it going up or going down. If you're going down, my understanding, unless it's changed, is the hard drive size needs to be the same. So I can take Lee's computer here, who is currently at a 2 CPU, 4 gig RAM, 128 gig hard drive, and I can downsize him to, well, if he was at an 8 gig, I can downsize him to a 4 gig. But he's currently at a 4 gig, so I'm going to upgrade him to an 8 gig. So again, you pass it the cloud PC name, you get the device information, the device ID, and you get the targeting service plan. Now, the web page I showed previously where I said you could download it as an XML file or as a CSV file, and here's the link. I did have the link there to that page with the CSV file. It'll give you the servicing plans. So here are my 2 servicing plans for my 2 different license types. So Lee is going to go up to an 8 gig of RAM computer. And then here I didn't use the parameter section. I showed you how you would do it actually on the command line. And of course it came up with an error. The current state conflicts with the requested. Oh. Let's give it the correct service plan. So he's going up to an 8, whose service plan target ID is 3. Let's try this again. So went through. In a few minutes, we should see him coming up saying he's being resized. So his resize is pending. Now this, I'm just going to show you the commands, and I'll show you a screen print that I really did it because we need to deprovision Adele's computer. So if I were to restore a snapshot, so I do have the snapshot, the just-in-time snapshots running. So if I run this command with the filter of Adele's Cloud PC, I can say get her different snapshots. She has a snapshot. She should have a snapshot. Here's her snapshot. Well, she had a snapshot, and this was the snapshot ID. I don't know why the command's not working for me today. I think I'm calling it the demo guides. I'll try this one more time. So here are all the different snapshots. So for Adele, I picked one of her previous snapshots. Basically, you're running the command, you pass it the snapshot ID from the response. And then you say run the restore command, passing it the managed device ID and the snapshot ID. And once you run this, the computer goes into a state where it says it's restoring. So this is from Adele from last night. So her status becomes restoring, and then the snapshot is restored. So if we look at Adele, you can see her restore completed at 7 o'clock last night, and today her restart has completed. The same is true if you it's basically the same commands. If you want to reprovision a computer, you're sending in the invoke reprovisioning commandlet with the Cloud PCID. Only here you're specifying which the OS version is, which I use Windows 11. So you have an option of Windows 11 or Windows 10, and you tell it the user account type, whether it's a standard user or an administrator. And you send those commands in, and it will reprovision the computer. All right. So now I'm going to deprovision Adele's computer. So I'm going to put my variables as to the SKU for her license so I can remove it. So to deprovision, you really only need to remove her either from the group or remove her licensing. Doing either one of those acts will put it in a grace period. But I'm going to make it cleaner, I'm going to remove her from both the group and remove the license. So before, when I was showing you the license command, I used a parameter. Here it is when you do the switches on the line. I'm not adding a license, so that's an empty array. When I'm removing the license, it's a hash table with the SKU. And then I'm going to remove the computer from the group. And then we should be able to see that the computer is now in a grace period. Run selection. ID. Empty. I swear I practiced this last night. So, but just taking her out of the license should have been enough to make her go into grace. So I said Adele. Oh, helps if you type the name of the group correctly. Let's see if she went into grace.
$43.55.
Okay, I'm going to say that one failed. And so that was basically, I had one more thing to demonstrate. And that was the audit messages. So my last thing was to look to see when a computer has been deleted. Deleted machines. So if I run this audit event, it's going to show me all the audit events that occurred within the tenant for the virtual machines. I don't know if you can see this correctly. So it's giving me the ID of the audit event, the time, and the activity. So basically, you can do a script that runs on a scheduled task or through some type of automation that looks for within a certain day for a delete. So this is telling you that this account was deleted, and then you can send an email to the user based upon the fact that their machine was deleted by running a query that looks for all deletes within the last X number of hours or the last X number of days. And that is it. Are there any questions?
I can't see any questions in the chat. We had some wild discussion going on, and I think a lot of questions were actually answered by other people in the chat. Generic ones.
I hope you found it informative. It's kind of boring just watching me show some scripts, but
I thought it was great.
I thought it's interesting to be able to see what it is. It's really endless, whatever they create the command lines for, that you can automate it using the graph and using the enterprise app. And while the next people are talking, I'll see about posting all of my scripts after I scrub my tenant ID out of them, posting them up on the meeting.
Yeah, really great demo. We are putting together a GitHub repo where we can put the scripts afterwards. So we'll reach out to you, Don, to get those uploaded there, and we will share the link with the community as well. So you can clean out your scripts from all your tenant ID stuff.
Okay. Should I still attach them to the meeting or just wait until the
if you like to, you can do both, but we'll keep them in the repo as well, just to have them somewhere more persistent as well.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Sorry about my little gaps there, but it's not a presentation unless the demo guys don't like you.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Don. It was really interesting, like Night pointed out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, let's hand over to our last speakers, Paul and Neil. Please take the stage.
Cheers, Ola. Yeah, absolutely great presentation, Dawn. Yeah, really enjoyed that. Right, let me try and share out here, see how we get on with the initial sharing part. Let me know if you can see that, okay?
Seems to be working great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Shall I start?
Go for it now.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Dawn and everyone else. Dawn, that was a really brilliant presentation. I loved it. Very informative. Thank you very much. I don't think ours is going to be anything as exciting unless, of course, everything fails, which is quite likely. We decided to talk today about implementing and troubleshooting hybrid join with Windows 365. Why? Because we are actually in the process of a 10-part blog series about Windows 365, and the one section that we had the most fun with, or the most trouble with, was the hybrid join. So we decided to share some of that love with you guys today. So who am I? My name is Niall Brady. It's an Irish name, which is probably why everyone has a problem with pronouncing it and spelling it. But there it is, and here I am, and my finger is pointing back there at these little homemade things that my eldest son's girlfriend makes out of socks, and I think they're really cute. They're llamas. So just shout out to them for that. And there's my Twitter handle, and there's my website address, and I'm an Enterprise Mobility MVP 12 times in a row. Hopefully we'll keep on going with that, and that is my introduction.
Cool. Cheers, Niall. I'm glad I didn't write the amount down there, because you've got more than I thought. So congrats on all those. I'm also an Enterprise Mobility MVP. My name's Paul Winstanley. I've been on the program now for 6 years. Been dealing with Config Manager, Intune, and all that kind of good stuff for quite a long time now. And I blog through my SCCM Mentor website. And that's my Twitter handle. So that's amalgamation, a blend of SCCM and Mentor. It's just the 1M on that one, which is probably a mistake, but it was done years ago. And I'm an independent consultant through my own company, SCCM Solutions Limited. Okay, so quick overview on the agenda then for this session. We're going to start, I'll be running through an introduction about the hybrid join and in relation to Windows 365, of course. We'll then be doing a live implementation. So Niall's kindly taken up the mantle for that one. So we'll see how that one goes. As I say, it's live, so anything could happen. And then we're running through some troubleshooting, some things that you need to look out for, particularly around provisioning the cloud PC and where things can go wrong when they do, kind of what areas you need to be looking at really for those sort of problems. As Niall said, we're running a 10-part series on 365. We're currently at part 4, and we've got plenty still to kind of go through, and some of the things that Christiaan mentioned in the what's new are things that will be featured in that series. as Niall mentioned, we had real problems with hybrid join, getting to grips with it, understanding it, whilst playing with the feature in the lab. So we felt it was a good subject to discuss today because of that complexity and trouble that we had with that, and to give some kind of tips on the things that we did along the way. Now, bearing in mind that this is done in our lab environment, so we're going to be sort of implementing certain things, and in an enterprise environment, you're going to be dealing with other factors. But you know, this is the sort of thing you could take the blog post there and run through that in your own lab environment to get a feel for how we did that. So initially, what is hybrid join? If you're not aware of it, if you haven't implemented hybrid join as yet, this is where your on-premise Active Directory objects get registered in Azure AD as well. So you need to be running Azure AD Connect to sync up devices from on-prem to the cloud. A key factor in this is that your devices require line of sight to your on-premise domain controllers. Without that kind of stability and connection, then devices do become kind of unusable. We did go through a process of how to set up AD Connect. We did another blog series last year around co-management with SCCM, with Config Manager. So I thought I'd just give a quick overview on the hybrid join aspect in Azure AD Connect, because you may not have done this yet in your own environment. In fact, I've implemented this with a customer today, so it's just getting used to that. What does it do in your environment? So in your AD Connect software, you kind of go in, configure using the device options choice here. This will go through, get to the point after you've authenticated, you'll go through and configure hybrid join for Windows 10 devices. And this is the key bit. So this will be you authenticating with Azure AD as a global admin, and then locally on the on-prem as an enterprise admin, and creating what's called the service connection point, or the SCP, in your AD. So your devices will use that information to sort of start the communication process and run through a flow of device registration, and they will create a self-signed certificate once they know about this SCP, and then pass user certificate information up to their own AD object. And then when you start to do syncs, hybrid join objects will get created as pending for registration in Azure AD, and then the device again will run a scheduled task effectively that will finalize the registration of the device in Azure. Just to note, when you do go through that process, it will create, as I say, this service connection point, and you can take a look at that in ADSI edit. And the device itself is really cares about these two bits of information here, which is your tenant ID and your tenant name, and that's the first part in that process, as I say. Okay. Okay, so just to highlight here some things that we wanted to kind of bring forward and discuss around a hybrid join versus your AD join. These bits here, device objects, group objects, user objects, as you can see, these rely on that Azure AD Connect sync in. So the device objects created on premise synced up to Azure AD, and that's exactly the same for your groups and your users, really. If you look at comparison with Azure AD, obviously with Azure AD join, you can just do Azure AD only accounts there for that particular type of join. As we say, it's more complex to set up the hybrid join experience, and this is what we're running through now. We'll be demoing, whereas in comparison to Azure AD join, it's a lot easier for you to set up. For example, you will need to create virtual networks, etc., to tap into this. You can't use the Microsoft managed VNet for hybrid join, whereas you can use that for Azure AD join, for example, if you just want to get up and running quite quickly and don't really need that connectivity to your own kind of managed network. As mentioned, line of sight on premise is required for the hybrid join, but for Azure AD join, no line of sight is required. When it comes to management of devices, you can, Intune's kind of key here, but you can co-manage your hybrid joins as you can co-manage your Azure AD join, but you can also tap into group policy because you're on-prem. Now, you may not want to do this. You might want to be moving away from group policy, but if you're not at that point yet, you're still struggling to make that move, although it's been made easier for us now with group policy analytics in Intune. You may have quite a bit of work to do there, so you can tap into hybrid join and leverage those group policies straight away. The same is the case with applications. You may have a legacy application that requires device authentication. That AD object is needed, and it's not as yet cloud ready, and that could be something that is months away. You know, it could be an 18-month, 2-year project to move away from that application. So you can tap into this straight away, use hybrid join to get up and running, start sort of leveraging some of that cloud goodness and cloud PC goodness, and your move to Azure AD only join could be coming down the line once you've made that switch and made the work. Done the work on either moving away from that legacy app or doing whatever you need to do to get that working in the cloud environment. So just a run through of requirements here, just sort of things that you need to have in place for this thing to work, and I'll kind of just run through the networking components in a moment. From a provisioning point of view, make sure permissions are granted for the following. You need a reader role on the subscription, network contributor permissions on the resource group that you create, and also the network contributor role on the actual virtual network that you're going to create. Without these permissions, you'll start to see problems when you come to provision the devices. From an Intune kind of AAD perspective, obviously you're going to need a valid tenant to do this in. You're going to require corporate enrollment and make sure that's not being blocked in any way at all. Even the MDM scopes, sorry, not the MDM scopes, so the device restrictions are allowed for corporate enrollment. Make sure that the infrastructure is also configured for domain join itself. So by that, this kind of taps into what's here on the right hand side about specifying the OU, or effectively assigning out permissioning, sorry, on the OU for any for your domain join account that you'll specify when you create the hybrid join provisioning policy. As I mentioned, cloud sync to on-premise devices, absolutely key in this whole process, and user accounts syncing up as well into the cloud. And obviously making sure that from a licensing point of view, users have got the required licenses, etc., to be able to use the cloud PCs. Okay. So a run through of the things that we need to set up, and this is what makes the hybrid join process that more complex. This is not something you're really going to need to set up as shown in that sort of versus table for Azure AD join. Run through the Azure networking components that you need. You'll need a resource group setup. You'll need a virtual network. You'll need a virtual network gateway, a local network gateway, and then a VPN connection. On the local networking side, you'll need the local VPN. In our case, we're using the RAS service, routing and remote access server. That's been around for a long time now. I think Windows Server 2003 that was first introduced. So we're using that to create that VPN connection from on-prem. And then you're going to need some routing information as well for it all to fall into place and work. And one of the key components around all this stuff is DNS and DNS working. It's always DNS, and that factors quite heavily in this process. So just to run through, an Azure virtual network is basically going to be our building block for the private network in Azure. So that VNet can enable resources that are within it, so our cloud PCs, or you can put Azure virtual machines in there, as we do for helping with our troubleshooting, to securely communicate with each other over the internet as well, and with on-premise network. So the VNet is similar to your kind of traditional network that you have in your own environment, but it also brings in additional benefits that you get with from infrastructure in Azure, such as scale, availability, and isolation. When you create the virtual network, that will create an address space on the VNet. You can tweak that, etc., however that works for you and what you want in that virtual network. The virtual network gateway is then used to send encrypted network traffic between the Azure network and your on-premise network over the public internet. You can define one virtual network gateway per virtual network, but you can create multiple connections to the same gateway. When you create that, 2 VMs get deployed in the virtual network's gateway, in the virtual network gateway subnet. And these contain the information for routing tables and gateway services. You'll see if you kind of go into the details about the virtual network, you can see there's a command there where it's kind of creating those VMs. You can't configure those VMs, you can't kind of touch those as such. And when you create the virtual network gateway, you'll then specify the type of connection that you're going to have. In our case, it will be a VPN, but you can also tap into ExpressRoute as well. On the local network gateway side, we'll use the RAS to teach that virtual network gateway what to connect to. So you'll have to give out address information. So effectively, what's the public address of your own local network, and what address spaces that you want to refer to in that local network gateway. So for example, you may have a 192.168.1 range or whatever locally, so you can list that off. You can go in and add a few, however many you need there. If any of those details change, for example, the public IP address, and if you're kind of playing with this at home, a lot of us have ISPs that will dynamically change the IP address. You can easily go back in and update those values down the line. Excuse me. But you can also tap into an FQDN as well if you've got any kind of dynamic DNS configuration set up, that you can sort of use that as well and specify that when creating the LNG. And then finally, the VPN connection itself. So you can create an IPsec or an IKE VPN tunnel to the on-prem network and the Azure VNet. And when you create that, you'll be specifying some details around pre-shared key, which when you come to your local networking components, the local VPN, you'll need to be entering those details in to make that connection back as well. Okay, so that's a brief overview then of the components you need up front. As we say, it's there's a lot more that needs to go in there in comparison with setting up just a pure Azure AD joined device. So
if I can add something about the Azure networking components, when I configure the hybrid connection for the Windows 365, I need to set up also the DNS to point to my local Active Directory DNS, and that is the additional requirement which I missed and I wasn't able to set up.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one Niall's going to run through any minute now, and you'll see that is a key component there. So I mentioned DNS earlier, but entering that DNS value of your local network DNS servers is absolutely key. Yeah. Okay, so implementing hybrid join. Niall is very kindly offering to take a demo through this live. So Niall, it's over to you, and best of luck with the demo.
Thanks, Paul. Maybe you should have said stupidly offered to demo, whatever. I'm going to go through the steps, and of course, because it's demo, I might miss something and break everything, but let's give it a go anyway. So first of all, I'm going to create a resource group. And all these steps are highlighted in our blog post on the same subject. So let's give it a go. And I'm going to create this in North Europe. Let's see, that looks okay. Click create. And that was nice and quick. And the next step is I'm going to create a virtual network. Let's see how well this works for us today. Give it a name. And we're going to put it in the same region that we put the resource group. And click create. And you can see there the IP address range. It was there briefly. That's important for later. And now it has created the virtual network. We're going to go to the virtual network now and do a final thing. I think Jacob was just referring to that, and that is DNS. So let's add some custom DNS here. And we're going to put in the DNS of the DNS server that we have. The on-premise DNS server. Yep. And we're also going to add the DNS of Microsoft's Azure status DNS. So we'll add that. It's a best practice, and we've linked to that in the blog also. So when you've done adding your DNS IP addresses, click on save. And that should save those settings. Now we go back to our resource group. And we're going to create a virtual network gateway. A lot of creation, but once it's done, hopefully we'll have something working. And if not, we already have one that's working, which we can look at. So here we are. We're going to create a virtual network gateway. This one can take a few minutes. Let's give it a name. And let's put it in North Europe. And the gateway type is going to be a Gen 1 basic.
Yeah, and the gateway, I was going to say, now the gateway type checkbox is there, is what I mentioned earlier. You've got the choice of VPN or express route here, but we're going with the VPN connection on this one.
Yeah. And here is our gateway subnet address range and public IP address name. So we'll give it an actual name. And I'm going to call that just public IP. And let's see, are we done here yet? Yeah, that looks good. Okay, And next up, we're going to create a local network gateway. I'll just click on create here. Hopefully everyone is still awake. This is the most exciting part. Doing things in Azure. Okay, so it's doing that. I'm just going to go over here while it's still deploying. And we'll go to our resource group and create. I'm going to create a local network gateway. And we'll give it a name.
Just to jump in real quick, Niall, we're getting on close to the set time we had set out, but
okay,
there is no rush. Just keep going. We will go over if needed. That's not a problem.
Okay, we'll try and thanks, Ola. We'll try and keep it within the time frame. I realize that the clock is ticking and we've got 12 minutes left, I believe. We're going to try our best to get everything done before then. We probably won't, but say that.
Yeah, but don't worry too much about it. We'll keep the recording for people who need to leave if you guys are okay with us posting the recording afterwards.
All right, let's see.
Keep on going.
I was going to say our hands are tied on Microsoft time on how long it takes to create some of these things anyway.
Yeah. So here, the IP address is the IP address of your public on-premise network. So that's what I'm putting in there. So please don't hack it, because that's my address. And in here, we're going to put in the IP address, local address space of your on-premise network. And we'll click on review and create. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes.
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay, now the next one is once that's created, I'm going to actually wait for that to create. I need to go in and click on connections. And we're going to add a VPN connection between the local network gateway. Oh, good. It's done. So let's go to that. Resource.
So now I was just going to ask the virtual network gateway there. That's usually the one that takes the longest to create, isn't it?
Yeah, but
is that the one that's still spinning at present?
No, it's nearly done. Yeah, in the background you can see it there.
Cool. Yeah.
So good point. It's still tick-tocking away, and hopefully that will be finished soon. But what I wanted to show you here on the local network gateway connections, this is normally where we would build a connection between the local network gateway and the virtual network gateway. So this one, as you can see, is now complete, the virtual network gateway, which means that we should be able to go in here, click on add, and add a connection between our local network gateway and our virtual network gateway. So we'll give it a name. We'll call it, we'll give it a name. VPN. And click on first virtual network gateway, and that would be this one. And I hope that you can all see here that nothing has happened. Even though I clicked on that, I'll do it again. It's not working. And we Googled this. We had the same problem when we were blogging it. And in the end, it seems it's a problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, so what we should see is that populated, isn't it, in the first virtual network gateway field, and there's nothing there. So that had us scratching our heads, wondering what to do next.
Right. So the answer of what to do next is to open up a cloud shell in Azure, which I'm going to do now, and bring that here. Move my icons around. And we'll just use some PowerShell to create the same thing. So just give me a sec.
So I don't know if I think Christian's gone by now, but I would have. My question to him would have been: is that a known bug? That's something that Microsoft are looking at to resolve, because it doesn't seem right that we have to go and do this really.
And we're not the only ones who had the problem.
Yep.
Okay, so now the final line is this one, and this is the one that takes about 2.5 minutes to complete. So off it goes, it's tick-tocking, and while it's doing that, I'm going to go to my VMs, not this one. I'm going to go to my VMs here, the RS server. We're going to start installing the server roles on this one.
Yeah, just a note there as well on that command behind. There's the shared key being created there as well for this VPN connection, which will be used in the RS setup as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we click on routing here. It'll prompt you to add additional features, direct access and VPN RAS, and we click next and next again. Click next and install, and then you can just watch this starting installation. Sometimes it's fairly quick, and sometimes it's fairly slow, which is why I have the CPU, the task manager, showing here, because I have seen it take its time, and I've seen SQL of all things, a local SQL Windows internal database spinning up here and consuming practically all of the CPU for a long time. So let's just see where this will go. And in the meantime, and the background, is it done yet? No, it's not.
Still running.
Yep, still running. But like I said, this should take about 2.5 minutes. And there it's done. So now really all we're waiting on is actually...
Do you want to show that VPN connection now it's set up? Just highlight that in the console now, what we've just done in the PowerShell commands there. Just show that's been created.
Yep, absolutely. So if we go to our local network gateway, which we created in this resource group, and it should be this one. And if we look at the connections of that now, you will see there is the VPN, which we created using PowerShell. And the status is unknown because it's not connected. It's obviously not connected because the RS server is still installing. And this is what I've seen, is it'll sit on 61% for a while, and then it'll jump to 64%, and finally it will jump to 100%. And at that point, we can then go ahead and start configuring it. But like I said, this does take some time. So let's see, can we cheat? And this one, and we can do this. This might fail horribly, but let's give it a go. I might regret doing this. Okay, and there it's done. Magic. All right, hopefully it was a good one. And let's go and configure it now. And we will configure. Next, we're going to choose a secure connection between two private networks. And I'm just clicking my way through. All the choices that I've made here are in our blog post, so you can refer to that. One thing to keep in mind is that after you've configured this, it'll start the services, and then it will try and get you to configure this demand dial interface wizard. And one of the things in here is it will want you to configure static routes, but don't do that during this wizard because it doesn't work. All right, so we're going to connect using a virtual private network, VPN. We're going to use IKE2, and we're going to use enter the name or IP address of the router you're connecting to. And that will be the one in our sample. Hold on a second.
That's going to be the public IP address of the virtual network gateway, isn't it?
That's right. So let's get that. One sec. So here's our, let's go to our virtual network gateway, and let's get our properties. There's the public IP address. Let's copy that. And let's go back to RS, and let's paste that in. Okay, root. And here is what I was talking about. Don't bother with adding anything here. It's not going to work because it doesn't know what the hybrid VPN thing that you just previously configured is called yet, but you'll configure it afterwards. Forget about all this and click finish. So now we're done. It's started up the service. We can go down here to static routes and do that thing that it was trying to do. And here is what I'm talking about. It didn't know what this was, but now we have it. So let's fill it in. Now remember, when we started creating this, it auto-assigned a IP range. That's what we're going to use here. And we'll just click OK. And we'll configure our hybrid VPN here. Some additional settings. We're going to set it to persistent connection. And we're going to set the security to the pre-shared key, which we used, which I think was W365 demo 2. Click OK, and I'm just going to maximize this. You see it says disconnected. I'm going to try connecting. See what happens. It's a live demo, so it'll probably, oh, it worked. Fantastic. So now if we go back here to Azure and click on Overview and go to Connections, we can see that it magically says not connected, but it does take some moments before that
takes a minute or two, doesn't it, to kick in? Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it still says not connected, which is fantastic. Okay, all right, that's very good. That should flip to connected if we did everything right, and I think we did everything right. So
we did. I think it's just a minute to connect to update in there now.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's is it worth looking at the static routes whilst that's waiting to connect?
Yep, sure. So static routes are something that we've configured in the lab to allow access between our cloud PCs and also when we're creating ANCs and our on-premise resources. So if we look here, for example, at a cloud PC, if I do something like NSLOOKUP web server, as you can see, it is making DNS calls to our on-premise resource, and it can see that this web server is at that on-premise address. And we could actually access resources on that because we've configured these static routes. So if I now go back to this on-premise resource and remove access to that to the on-premise DNS resource, I've just deleted that route. If I go back to the cloud PC and do the same thing, let's see what happens. And it fails. It fails terribly, and nothing will work from this point onwards because it does not know how to access the DNS on the DC. So now, keep that in mind.
It's worth saying for our particular lab setup, we had to enter that particular route on our DNS server, which is the domain controller. But obviously, in a corporate environment, you'd probably put that on a router somewhere to route. To sort of kind of route out.
Exactly. And another thing to point out here is this is the IP range of your cloud PCs that you're configuring in the ANC, which I just configured, but this one is a previously configured one, so that's why it's different. And the IP address here is of your RAS server. So I've got multiple RAS servers here, and the one in the example here is for our working cloud PC. So if I do this now, it now works.
Okay.
So let's go back to here and just see, does it update to connected as a matter of interest? Yeah, the demo gods are definitely with us today. Not connected. Fantastic. Okay, shall we continue? Because I think we've configured it. It's connected on the RAS. If we now go to Intune here, Windows 365, and click on Azure Network Connection. And get rid of the filter. We can see here, no. Okay, of course we have to create our ANC now. That's the last thing. So to create the ANC, we're going to click on Hybrid Azure AD Join and fill in some useful information. We're going to give it a name.
I think based on Dawn's session, though, Niall, I think I'm going to be doing this via PowerShell from now on, to be honest.
Yeah, fantastic. She gave some absolutely brilliant examples. Was fantastic. Okay, and let's choose our virtual network and continue. And I'm looking at the time, and I see we've gone over time, and I apologize for that. Now we need to put in our Active Directory DNS domain name, our organizational unit, and that's the organizational unit of where we're going to drop our cloud PCs when they join the domain, the on-premise domain. We're going to give it an Active Directory username, UPN, and the password for that. Get this wrong, it will fail the ANC checks. So now we're going to click on Review and Create, and what you will see here is the big long list of checks that it's going to perform. Well, actually, you will see that when you click on the ANC name itself. So I should have named that 2, but it shouldn't matter here. So if we click on running checks, no, it doesn't want to do that. What I wanted to see was the list of checks that it's going to do, but we will see that when it fails, because it will fail. Actually, it might not fail.
Let's see how it goes.
Let's go back here.
Yeah.
But what we can't, now it says connected. So that's perfect.
Yep. It's just timing.
The thing is, it will take about 10 minutes for this to occur. But what we can look at is one that we created earlier that we know has failed, and we can tell you a little bit about why it failed.
Yep. Shall I bring the slides up now?
Yep, please do.
Yep. Okay.
And actually, you can start talking now for a minute.
That's fine. No, that's brilliant. No,
yep.
Yeah, cheers. Okay, let me share out. Okay. So before we kind of run into those provisioning policy checks, this is some information that we got from the Ignite session around. I can't remember what the title of that session was, but it was giving details on kind of percentage failures, AAD against AAD join. And as you can see, there's a lot of potential room for failure here due to the complexity. And a lot of the failures were around this connectivity to on-prem and resolution of things such as the Active Directory domain, the OUs, etc., etc. So what I mean, Niall has done a great job there of getting that connected, and hopefully the checks will run through, but actually just making sure the VPN's connected. But there are other things to think about along the way that could cause the failures. So we'll just highlight some of those as we go through these screenshots. So the first one, I'm just gonna have to clean my glasses because I've got a smudge on it and I can't see the screen. Bear with me one sec. Right, that's better. Okay. So what we've noted is the first time that we run the provisioning policy, we're always getting a warning around Azure AD device sync. So you can see the warning coming up there saying it cannot find the cloud PC computer object in Azure AD. So we took a look at this behind the scenes. Hopefully you can see that. But what we noticed is actually when these provisioning checks take place, there is a health check object that gets created in your Azure AD. So we had a couple of sort of stale objects in here, but this is the one that was actually created, being enabled during the provisioning checks. And when we took a look into Azure AD, it didn't actually exist there. On the next AD Connect sync, we can see that actually that device then was syncing up. And pretty soon after, we had the object visible in Azure AD. So that provisioning check that warning will always come up in during the provisioning check, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Niall, that then is not a warning after that. It's always a pass, isn't it, after that process takes place?
Yeah. So if everything else passes and this is your only problem, that initial warning will just go away after the next successful Azure AD Connect sync.
Yep. Perfect. Right. Okay. So for this particular set of, and sorry, this is a little bit blurry, this particular screenshot, so apologies for that. It's saying DNS can resolve Active Directory domain error and Active Directory domain join error. So for when we got these particular errors, the problems related to things such as the public IP address of the on-premise network had actually changed. So going back to what I said earlier, if you've got an IP address that's dynamic, it's going to change over time, and the check failed. So bear in mind that these provisioning checks will run every 6 hours. So if that IP address changes, then this will fail in relation to that. Another failure that brought up these two errors was the RAS server was actually down. So the VPN tunnel was down on premise and not connected. So we got these two errors as well. The static routes not being defined caused this. So if we deleted the static route, or actually before we even got to that point and actually created those routes and knew they needed to be created, we got these errors as well. The health check VM and the object that in relation to it, if that ever gets deleted from AD, then this is what you'll get on the console as an error. So it's really key that those AD objects don't get deleted. So from our testing, we saw that actually it doesn't ever get recreated again. And then a new provisioning policy would need to be created to rectify that problem.
ANC, a new ANC. The ANC itself, the ANC will be invalid. It will never work.
Sorry, not a provisioning policy in ANC. Apologies. So there are things to look at when you get those two errors. Note their Active Directory domain join showing an error. If you get that just by itself, then that means actually this is problems with the Active Directory domain join itself. So when Niall entered the details a moment ago, make sure that the OU is correct. Make sure the password of the account that you've specified, or even the username of that account that you specified, is correct. But also do those checks on the back end itself on AD. Make sure that account has been delegated the correct rights to do the domain join against that particular OU. As I mentioned right at the start, corporate enrollment of devices is key for this process as well, for the ANC. And if you are blocking that in any way, maybe you haven't started with Windows enrollment in your Intune environment as yet, and you'd had it all blocked up to that point, and you're just starting with Cloud PC, then you'll get this warning. Pretty self-explanatory, really, but that's, go into the console, take a look at your device platforms, and make sure you're not blocking corporate enrollment there. And one thing to note, there was some discussion early on, actually, right at the start of today's meetup, around supported regions for Cloud PC provisioning, and Christiaan mentioned bringing in, I think Emirates was one potentially to be brought on board, and I mentioned Sweden Central, which isn't supported. I think Ola gave me a thumbs up on that one. So this is what you will get if you go through that process of trying to do the hybrid Azure AD join in a region that it isn't on this supported list. So take a note here. So I've called all the things I created around this were called unsupported regions, so I could identify that in my console. but actually it does tag it here for you, and it will be grayed out because you can't do it in this region. So I picked the Sweden Central to create the virtual network and create the resource groups, etc. So keep that one in mind as you start to build out in your environment. So that's some basic troubleshooting around the ANC to make sure that you tick all the boxes and all the checks pass. So now just a quick one. How's that provisioning going? Health check going?
Yeah, it's nearly there. I mean, we can show just one or two other little things before we're done. I guess most people have left now, but they can still watch the end of this recording if they're truly interested in pain. So as we see here, it's still running checks, and those checks, they can take a bit of time, unfortunately, but when it's eventually done, we'll get a list of either checks successful or something failed or there's a warning. We already showed you this checks failed. I'll just have a quick look at it again, and you can see that's the Azure AD's device sync that Paul was talking about. You can always view details to get more information about it. And these are those DNS-related errors, or they could be many other things. I just wanted to show one other thing, and that was accessing. Oh, look at that. Check successful with warning. I'm sure it's going to say with warnings. So if we click on that, it will be the Azure AD sync. And we can actually see this live now by going to Active Directory, go to the OU that we specified. We're going to click here, and there should be 3, and there are. So there's the 3. And what this means is that the new one, whichever one it is, I can't remember, that will now sync up within about 30 minutes to Azure AD. It won't be present in AD at the moment. So if you look for CPC-HTH, then you will see the health check virtual machines that are synced up from your on-premise AD. And just to reiterate, don't go deleting these. If you delete them from Active Directory, then you will also need to delete the ANC that references it. And unfortunately, there's no information that we could see in the console that will tell you which ANC is tied to which virtual machine that it creates. So if you delete,
I was going to say the other difficulty is actually finding that particular issue, because that's an object that is kind of tucked away. You may not even think about it. What's caused that particular failure when you create that ANC. It's a tricky one to troubleshoot.
Yep, it is. And one last thing before we go, let's imagine that you want to access resources on another PC, like for example here. I'm trying to access the web server IIS website, and it doesn't work, as you can see. Can't reach the page. But if we go back to the device itself, and actually you won't be doing this in production, but in a lab you will do this, and add a static root for that resource that you want to get access to. This would be configured on the switch level in production. This should now work, and there you go. It works. So we've proven something. And you can use this for accessing all sorts of resources like network shares and whatnot in your on-premise resource. So I mean accessing on-premise resources from your cloud PC, obviously.
Yeah,
so
I think I was going to add as well, Niall, that when it comes to those kind of networky based problems, when you're struggling, you don't know which of the things that is causing that. You don't know what the thing is that's causing the problem. The advice from us really is to spin up a virtual machine in the in Azure and add it into the VNet that you've just created. That will add a device into that 10.6, I think, address you've just created now, isn't it? Then use that virtual machine to troubleshoot. Okay, so where Niall was doing an NS lookup earlier, do that. Can you hit the DNS server locally, or are you blocked from doing DNS? Because DNS is pretty key for this to function. Can you hit the Google website or any? I'm not sponsoring Google there. Any website that you get of your choice that you go to, But spinning up that VM is kind of key to start doing, poking around, trace routing, port checking, etc., that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
exactly. And if it doesn't work here, it's not going to work in your ANC. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's key to kind of use this, spin it up, do some testing, spin it down, shut it down to avoid any cost in your lab as well.
Exactly, because it's going to cost. So thanks for reminding me. I'm going to spin it down.
And that's it. That completes the session on hybrid join implementation and troubleshooting. And I think now, congrats on that, because it's worked right from the start.
It worked amazingly. Yes, fantastic. Obviously, the next and last thing, which we're not going to bother demoing because it's boring, is creating a provisioning policy, targeting it, and then launching a cloud PC using that ANC. But this is the hard work. Trust me, this is where you'll have all your problems, is getting the ANC to work for hybrid Azure AD domain join.
I've just seen a question there from Morton around Windows 365 alerts for ANC failures. Have we tried that? We haven't at this point. So I think that's something we can test out, take a look at, and see if it's of any use at all for giving information. I
have looked at it.
Oh, you have, sorry.
Yes, and you can sign up for emails, and it will send emails when there are problems. So if you liked all those sort of generated emails from your tenant telling you that there is a problem with your ANC, then it's a useful feature.
Yeah, and I think even whilst we've been working on the blog series, we have seen the list of checks change over time. From our initial, I think even the screenshots on the blog post are different to what we see now in the console. So hopefully that set of checks is going to become a bit more evident as to what the problem is, without us having to reel off a list of things. It could be pinpoint the problems a little bit better. There is a knowledge base article that gives you an overview of all these checks as well, and the things to look out for, but it's just one sentence. It doesn't go too in depth on those, but definitely worth taking a look at that as well.
Yep. And I think that's pretty much us done for the day. It's now getting late here in Sweden. And I want to say thank you very much to the user group for hosting us and everyone else, and thanks to Dawn for a fantastic demo. I thought it was great.
Thanks. It was a great demo as well from you guys. Thanks, a lot of great information.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around, everyone, and again, thanks for the invite.
Thank you guys. Really good demo, as Dawn mentioned, and a really good demo from Dawn as well. If you guys have a link to the blog post you are referring, it would be great if you could post that in the chat, and we'll add it to the show notes, sharing that afterwards.
I think Niall's on it.
Yeah, I'll post it right now. Just one second.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
It's on the slides as well, so you can link to it from there if we distribute those slides out. But there you go.
If you have any material you want us to share, just send it over to us, and we'll get it up on the GitHub repo that we will share a link to in a little bit.
Brilliant.
But thank you very much for showing us all this good stuff.
Thank you.
It was really great demos from all of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care. Until the next time. Have a great day, rest of the day, and a great night for all you Europeans.
Thank
Sleep
you.
well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.